Hey guys, how's it going? For today's video, we're going to talk about the XH2. I think it's been a year now since I've owned this fancy little camera here. And you know what? I think it's time to give like a proper long-term review of the camera and my experience of it. I heavily use this camera throughout like the most of 2023, doing portraits, doing video content, and shooting portraits and weddings. And it's been a really great experience since the last time I've talked about this camera. And I could definitely say that it's hard to imagine what other brands or camera models that I would be just as invested. So the XH2 came out in September of 2022, and it definitely like made a huge impact in the crop sensor mirrorless community. This one is of the fact that it has a whopping 40 megapixels in this sensor, which is kind of unheard of because I don't think I've like ever remembering any crop sensor cameras that has that many megapixels packed into that smaller sensor compared to a full frame. And there were like lots of debates saying that how can a crop sensor pack so much megapixels, and is it able to like collect all of that like extra pixels and extra image data, all that data range with that sensor, right? It's been like a huge debate since it got released. There's a party where that, hey, the extra 14 megapixels on top of the 26 megapixels you would see on the XS20, XT3, and XT4, the XH1, right? Because the fact that you can punch in, meaning like you can crop your photos a bit more without losing much detail. You actually may keep a lot of detail depending on how much you crop, right? I do crop a lot of my photos because the fact that the benefit of more megapixels in any sensor is that you can keep that same amount of detail and sharpness. I mean, like long story short, you don't lose the image quality when you crop in, which is great. Especially if you do like a lot of product photography and especially landscape. I think that's a big benefit for people that do landscape photography. But for my use case, I do a lot of weddings and portraits, so I do tend to crop a little bit more with portraits than anything else because the fact that I like to adjust my composition. Just to quickly go over some of like the specs other than me mentioning the 40 megapixel like sensor, is that it comes with a new, well, not really new now, but like latest X-Trans 5 CPU processor. What that really means that it's like the benefit of that is like a faster readout speed, better autofocus, or you just need like a proper like or more reliable autofocus. And I can definitely say that with the consistent like firmware updates to the XH2 since the release date, since it got released, sorry, is that Fuji's did an amazing job with improving the autofocus over time. And I definitely say that they ironed out most of like the issues that a lot of like early adopters like me, as an example, had issues with the autofocus. There's like a green box that tells you, hey, this person is actually in focus, just capture the shot. And over time, I noticed that a lot of my photos weren't in focus at all, even though like the camera is telling me, hey, the subject's in focus. So what I was saying that is that overall, with Fuji's very consistent firmware updates, they definitely made the autofocus overall a better experience, and the hit ratio is so much higher now that it's good enough, which is fine with me. It's been great so far. I would say it's like initially the first 2 or 3 months of me using it, like autofocus was a huge issue for me. and it was not fun at all. Finding out that you had portrait sessions, and you're so excited. You're like, okay, I got these. These are our focus. Can't wait to see what the files look like. But no, when you pop your SD card into a computer and edit it through Capture One Pro or Lightroom or whatever editor you use, and you like just zoom in, you're like, oh man, all the photos were not in focus. So I was pretty frustrated with that. But overall though, now it's like a 9 out of 10 experience. So let's talk about the lens I've used within my XH2, because I think that's very important for a lot of people out there, because I noticed that there's a lot of comments saying that what Fuji lens or what third-party lens is able to resolve the 40 megapixel sensor. It's a little tricky, but thankfully what Fuji did was gave out a huge not PDF but a chart of what lens that's able to resolve the 40 megapixel sensor, which is great. From my experience, so the lens I've used is the new 56mm f2 WR Mark II, the old 56, the old 35 and 1.4 from Fuji, the Viltrox 27mm F1.2, and the 75 Viltrox 1.2, I believe, something like that, and the 23mm f2 and the 23mm f1.2 Mark II, and I think lastly the 33mm f1.4. So from my just looking at it at the time, is that it did seem that a lot of those lenses I used was able to resolve the 40 megapixels that comes out of the sensor. I can't say for a fact that it could be true that what I say or what I saw at that time, it does resolve it, because I'm not going to zoom in at 200% or 400% to see if it's sharp or if it's retaining a lot of detail, right? Because at that point you're just being nitpicky. I don't want to be too nitpicky, because I care more about how the images is composed, how I'm able to play with artificial lighting and natural lighting, playing around with the shadows and my exposure. I think to me that's way more important than just to make sure that a lens is able to utilize the full sensor. That's just me. You guys could be completely, on the other side of that argument, which is fine. But for me, right, I've been doing portraits for 3.5 years, weddings for 2 years, and so far, I'm happy with what my image comes out of the camera, and my clients are happy with their photos when they, get their wedding photos. So it's a win-win situation for me, right? It's a good video camera. Honestly, it is a really good video camera. And I know that you're gonna say, oh, but how about the XH2S, right? That's more of a video-centric model, or compared to the XH2, which is true, right? Because the XH2 comes with a double stack sensor, so it's a faster readout speed. And other video features also is really worth mentioning is that it can shoot at 6.2K open gate, and I think that is a big advantage for a lot of people that are mainly a content creator or or a filmmaker, right? Because the extra vertical space. I think that adds more room for you to play around, for to crop in your footage, or just making video content for TikTok, Instagram, or shorts on YouTube. And arguably, it's definitely a overall better video camera, but it does cost quite a bit more. I think from Canadian pricing, I think it's over $500 more than the XH2. And to me, I can't justify spending $500 more just to be able to shoot 6.2K, and obviously, but the double stack sensor comes with better autofocus and all those faster processing power. But what the XH2 provides for me, it's more than enough. Autofocus is great. The video capabilities though with XH2 it's great too, because it can shoot 4K 60, 24, 25, all those formats. You can shoot 8K, which is, you know, great. I don't use it, but it's there for you to use. Rolling shutter, it's pretty like bad on like XH2. If you like move slightly like sideways, back and forth, or even if you're recording cars or like a fast moving train, you can definitely see like the rolling shutter. It's very, very obvious. Filming like a moving train back in Tokyo with my XH2, and I was like, oh, that looks so weird. There's no doubt that you should get an XH2S for that. Purpose only. Video, great. But it can still do pretty good photos too though. But it has lesser megapixels. But I think in my opinion, 26 megapixels or even 20, honestly, it's more than enough, right? It's big enough for you to do large prints. The 40 megapixel with the XH2, I think it's a big bonus for me and anyone else that are looking to make large prints. So I was saying earlier that I mainly do portraits and weddings. So from my experience with portraits though, I would say that it's great because of the fact that a lot of like the faster prime lens that, you know, that's like native glass Fuji, for example, the 56 millimeter. It's that lens itself, it's like quite big, and it felt really odd using it with my XT4 back in the day because of the fact the body proportion is so weird. But the fact that the XH2 body is pretty much a replica of the XH1 except a few cosmetic upgrades and whatnot. It has a better grip, and also the fact that the body is more suited to be equipped with bigger lens. It just looks overall better, right? And for me, the weight difference between like the lens and the body is now more in balance comparatively with like a smaller body of the XT4 and equipping it with like a bigger lens. Battery life is so much more better than it is on the XT4, even though, you know, they use the same batteries, right? So I think that's a great thing that Fuji kept the batteries the same, starting with XT4 and all the way to, you know, the top of line XH2S, XH2, XS20, and even the GFX, like the GFX 50S Mark II, the 100S, the 100 Mark II, they all use the same battery. So if you're looking to upgrade, right, from the XT4 to an XH2, or maybe jump all the way to the medium format, you're great on batteries because they use the same battery. So the image quality and the color that comes out of the Fuji XH2, it's great. I initially had a little problem with adjusting to the new RAW files that comes from the new sensor, right? Because I originally had the XT4 as my main camera back in the day before the XH2 came out, and all my presets and just like my workflow was like dedicated to work with the XT4 files. Well, basically the X-Trans4 like sensor, color science. And when I was editing a few of my early sessions with the XH2, and I applied some of my presets, and I was like, oh, that's so weird. Why are these colors turning out a little different from the usual, right? So initially, so I was thinking, oh, maybe I did something wrong. Am I using the correct settings in camera? Was there like a new hitting feature that I should turn on, turn off to maximize like, you know, the dynamic range? In the end, it was just the fact that it's a new sensor and the colors will be different overall. So it took me a while to adjust to that, and I was like upset just a little bit. Well, not a little bit. I'm just upset overall about how that I had to redo all my presets just to make sure that it should look the way it should, but on the XH2 files. So that was a bit of a drag to just relearn everything again, and just learning the ins and outs of how much I could push the files. But overall now, just using it for a year, I'm used to it now, and yeah, and so overall though, like the color science of the sensor is good. So, but let's talk about file size. So coming from, XT4's 26 megapixel sensor to the 40 megapixel sensor that's on the XH2, the file size is huge, like no joke. One raw file from XH2 is about 86 megabytes, compared to XT4's 26 megapixel file is like, I believe, 55 megabytes. So I think that's like, if you say out loud, that doesn't sound too big, but that adds up though if you take like hundreds or even thousands of photos for a wedding. So I had to really buy more external hard drives, upgrade my Dropbox cloud storage space still to make room for all those files. And initially it was not fun because that's a lot of money that I'm forking over for additional space to host all those files. So using the XH2 for weddings, I do like the design of the XH2 because of the fact that it has a better grip compared to the XT4 and XT5. And like the weight is pretty hefty, but I don't mind it. I do like my cameras a little bit on the weighty side because like it just tells me that this camera is well built. I took this camera to Oregon with my partner for, I believe, 5 days, and of our luck, it was raining throughout the whole trip. But that didn't stop us from checking out some like amazing like beaches and like trails and hikes during that time. But man, it was raining hard, and my H2 was like soaked throughout the whole like trip because I really wanted to take photos and video of the trip. And I was like a little worried like how much this camera can take all that rain in just in harsh conditions in general. But after the trip, getting back home from Oregon, you know what, this camera is built to last 100%. So in terms of me using it for weddings, with the XH2 lasts much longer than XT4, so I do find myself not having to swapping batteries all the time. I think for a full 8-hour wedding, I could probably get away with one battery on a full charge, which is pretty crazy. I don't need to bring like multiple batteries with me. And yeah, I mean, there isn't much to say. Is that I like it. The quality that comes out of the sensor, like the build quality, the sensor, the autofocus is so much better now. It's hard to argue against not getting XH2 if you're looking to buy one or upgrade too. And also, it's not a bad travel camera either, right? If you're looking to, do all the video and photos on your travels, such as like what you do in general and content-wise, I think this is a perfect hybrid camera, like in my opinion. So I hope my long-term experience with the XH2 was very insightful, and I hope you guys enjoyed that video. If you do, don't forget to hit the like button. If you have any questions about the camera itself, just feel free to leave a comment. And if you like my content or you want more of it, please hit the subscribe button. Anything will help for my channel. All right guys, take care. Cheers.